3D printing can often be a long journey. So what are we up to? We've got this crystal ball. It's got a very simple PCB. I've got some new PCBs. So here's my new PCB with some nice RGB LEDs on there. And I want to replace this nice wooden base with an even nicer 3D printed version that fits my PCBs. So version 1. We have room for the antenna. So the PCB will slot in there, and we have room for the USB. What have we forgotten? I want to make this battery powered, and the battery is not going to fit. So that's version 1, not good enough. Version 2, we still have our room for the PCB, and we now have room for the battery. But I've forgotten about these buttons. So there's no way to push the buttons. So version 2, still not good enough. Moving on to version 3. Now we have holes for the buttons, so our PCB will slot in, but I've made these very, very tiny. Now we could poke something in to actually push the buttons, but not very effective. So still not good enough. Version 4. So we've made some improvements. We've made this hole much bigger, so now I can 3D print a button to go in there. And I've also made a position for a switch, so we can turn our thing on and off. So let's just find a switch. So you can see our switch slots nicely in there, turn it on and off. Unfortunately, I made this hole bigger. I left this hole the same size. Still not good enough. So version 5. Now we have our holes big enough so I can 3D print some buttons. And we have our switch position. Still works. Unfortunately, when I try and actually insert the PCB, it's a bit too tight. And what I've managed to do is break one of my PCBs. So you can see here, we've lost one of the buttons. And over here, there should be a nice little LED indicator. That's got knocked off. So, still not good enough. Version 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. How many have we done so far? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Version 6. I fixed the problem with the PCB not fitting, so that now fits in nicely. We have the holes for our buttons, but somehow during the process I've made this too small. Our switch now sticks out the bottom. Still not good enough. Finally, we hit the version that works. So now we have our nice USB with its little LED indicator, which you can see there. We have our switch, so we can turn things on and off. We have room for our battery, so that will fit in there. And even better, we now have these nice little buttons, so we can push the buttons, and that will push these little switches. It works, the final version. And the crystal ball sits on there. However, I have these screws to push the PCB in. I've made the top too small, so I think you can see there we have these little dibbles where the screw heads protrude. We're going to need another version, but I think this is pretty much done. I just need to make this top bit another millimeter tall. So, job done.